All right, now that we know how to read a percent bar graph, let's go ahead and let's do another example and answer some questions. So let's go ahead and let's look at number 1. It says this percent bar graph shows the different parts of garden. 1. Use the number line to figure out the percent for each type of vegetable. Label it on the graph. Now notice here, this time my number line is not horizontal, it's vertical, up and down. So let's go ahead and let's figure out the percentage of each vegetable. So here, remember, I'm going to start by looking at my number line. I'm going to see where my number line starts. And I can see here my number line starts at 0 and it ends at, the number line does start at 0, but we're looking at just the tomato section. And it ends at 30. So here, we're going to take where it ends, which is 30, and subtract the number where it begins. So 30 minus 0 is 30. Therefore, just the tomatoes would represent 30% of all the vegetables. Okay, now let's look at the cucumbers, the blue spot. So I see here it starts at 30 and it ends at a number between 40 and 50. That would be 45. So it ends at 45, so I'm going to take 45, and it begins at 30, so I'm going to subtract 30. So 5 minus 0 is 5, 4 minus 3 is 1. So cucumbers represents 15%. Okay. Now I'm going to look here. We have the graph, the red part, the peas, starts at 45 but ends at 90. So I'm going to take where the graph ends, 90, and subtract the beginning part, which is 45. And 90 minus 45, let's see, I'm going to regroup. Oops, sorry, that should be a 9. Oops, sorry, that should have been a 10, which is going to also be 45. So that would be 45%. Then the last part here, the onions, I'm going to see it starts at 90 and ends at 100. So I'm going to do 100 minus 90, which is 10. So this would be 10%. Now that I've figured out each section and the percent that it is, it's going to be way easier to answer all these questions just by finding all the percentages first. So I already did number 1. Now it says, what vegetable is there the most of? And if you look here, the vegetable that there's the most of would be the vegetable with the highest percent. So you can clearly see here that peas has the largest percent. Now that type of question you could have answered without finding the percents. You could have simply just seen that this was the biggest part of your graph. Number 3 says, what vegetable is there the least of? So if you look here, the vegetable that there's the least of would be onion. Not only is it the smallest part, it has the smallest percent. So we're going to go ahead and put onion in here. Now, these last type of questions, these are more of the questions of why you need to figure out the percent before you answer questions. So let's look here. We're going to use the graph to determine each statement is true or false. So let's look at the first one here. There are twice as many tomatoes as cucumbers. Let's see, twice as many. Let's see, how many tomatoes are there? Tomatoes, there are 30. And cucumbers, there are 15. Well, here, 15 is half of 30. So that means 30 is twice as big as 15, so this is true. All right, let's look at the next question here. It says over half the garden is peas. Well, I can easily see here that peas is 45%. Now, if I hadn't actually figured out the percent, it does look about half, and I probably would have chosen true. But since I actually did the math, I can see that it is not over half. So this question is false. Because remember, a half equals 50%. And we're not over 50%. We're still under the 50%. So that's a false statement. Okay, the next question asks, peas and onions together are more than half the garden. Well, let's see. The peas is 45 and the onion is 10. So let's see. 45 plus 10 is 55. And 55% is more than half, so this is true. Okay, and now let's look at the last question. It says there are more onions than cucumbers. Well, here there's onions, there's 10%, and cucumbers is 15%. So that would be false. Because here, onions are 10% and cucumbers are 15%. So that's a false statement. Now, had I not done my math and I was just eyeballing it, I might have gotten the answer wrong. But because I did my math, it was easier to tell.